I was 68 when my world cracked open, betrayed by the family I'd stitched together with every ounce of my heart. My daughter-in-law, Ashley, stood in my living room in the house I'd paid for, loved and lost my husband in, and declared, "You're just a guest here." Her words weren't just a slight, they were a blade, slicing through decades of sacrifice. My son James, my only child, stood behind her, his eyes glued to the floor, silent as a stranger. That night, as I sat alone in the dark, a spark of defiance flickered, one I hadn't felt since I buried my husband. Subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let's dive into this story together. My name is Elizabeth, and I've lived in that two-story brick house in Savannah, Georgia, for nearly 40 years. It's the kind of place that holds you close, with its wide front porch and the ancient oak tree out front, its branches dripping with Spanish moss like nature's own chandelier. My late husband, Tom, and I bought it when we were young, scraping together every penny for the down payment. We raised James there, watched him take his first steps in the hallway, and carved his height into the kitchen doorframe each year. After Tom passed 5 years ago, the house became my anchor. Every creak of the hardwood floors, every chip in the dining room table, held a memory of him, of us. I thought it would be my home until I died. I never imagined it would turn into a battlefield. 2 years ago, James and Ashley moved in with their daughter Emma, who was barely a year old then. James had lost his job as a mechanic, and Ashley's part-time gig at a boutique wasn't enough to keep them afloat. "Just until we get back on our feet, Mom," James had said, his brown eyes so like Tom's pleading. I didn't hesitate. I opened my doors, my heart, my everything. They took the upstairs bedrooms, and I moved my things to the guest room on the first floor to give them space. I cooked dinners, chicken pot pie, James's favorite babysat, Emma so Ashley could work, and never asked for a dime in rent. I thought I was helping my family, building something new with them, but I was wrong. It started small, like a crack in a foundation you don't notice until the walls start to buckle. Ashley began rearranging my kitchen, tossing out my old cast-iron skillet, the one Tom used to make pancakes on Sundays, for some sleek, non-stick thing she ordered online. "This is more practical, Elizabeth," she'd say, her voice sweet but sharp, like sugar laced with vinegar. She'd call me Elizabeth, never Mom, though I'd asked her to early on. I let it slide, thinking she'd warm up. Then came the bigger changes. My curtains, replaced with gauzy ones, she called modern, my coffee table pushed to the garage to make room for a glass monstrosity. "This place could use a fresh look," she'd say, her eyes scanning my home like it was a fixer-upper she'd already claimed. James, my boy, who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories, didn't stop her. He'd shrug when I mentioned the changes, muttering, "It's not a big deal, Mom, not a big deal." Those words stung more each time. I'd look at him, searching for the boy who'd once run to me when he scraped his knee, but he was gone, replaced by a man who couldn't meet my eyes. I told myself it was temporary. They'd move out once James found work. I clung to that hope, even as Ashley's comments grew bolder, her tone colder. "You don't need to hover, Elizabeth," she'd say, when I offered to watch Emma. "We've got this." The final blow came on a humid Tuesday evening in July, the kind of night where the air clings to your skin like damp cotton. I was in the living room, folding Emma's tiny clothes, pink onesies with little ducks on them, while the scent of jasmine drifted in from the open window. Emma was upstairs, napping, and the house was quiet, except for the hum of the ceiling fan. Ashley stormed in, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun, her face pinched with anger. James trailed behind, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he wanted to disappear. "Elizabeth, we need to talk," Ashley said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't sit, just stood over me, arms crossed, her manicured nails tapping against her elbow. I set the onesie down, my hands steady despite the sudden tightness in my chest. "What's wrong?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, though I could feel the storm coming. "This arrangement isn't working," she said, her eyes narrowing. "You're always here, always in our space. This is our home now, and you're just a guest here." The word guest landed like a slap. echoing in the room. My name on the deed, my mortgage payments, my years of love poured into every brick and beam, and I was a guest. I looked at James, waiting for him to speak, to say something, anything. He stared at the floor, his jaw tight, his silence louder than Ashley's words. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand why he let her say it, but I didn't. I sat there, the folded onesie still in my lap, my heart cracking under the weight of their betrayal. I see, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Ashley nodded, like she'd won something, and turned to leave. James hesitated, then followed her, not once looking back. I sat there until the room grew dark, the jasmine scent turning sour in my nose. That night, alone in my guest room, my own guest room, I cried for the first time since Tom's funeral. The tears burned, but they didn't last long. As they dried, something else took root, a quiet burning defiance. I wasn't going to beg for my place in my own home. I'd spent my life putting my family first, Tom, James, now Emma, but I was done being invisible. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing: they wouldn't win. Not this time. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt that spark of defiance grow into a plan. It was risky, maybe even cruel, but it was mine, and for the first time in months I felt alive. The days after Ashley's words were a haze of quiet rage, each one heavy with the weight of betrayal. I moved through my house like a shadow, avoiding her smug glances and James's guilty ones. Every corner of the place, my place, felt tainted now. The kitchen where I'd taught James to make biscuits, the living room where Tom and I danced to old records, even a backyard where Emma chased fireflies, they all carried the sting of Ashley's voice. "You're just a guest here." I'd catch Emma's giggles from the kitchen, her tiny voice calling Gamma, and my heart would twist. Leaving her would be the hardest part, but staying meant surrendering my dignity, and I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. Not ever. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Ashley had replaced my framed family photos on the mantel with sleek, minimalist prints, as if my history was clutter. Packages arrived almost daily, labeled new home essentials, filled with throw pillows and chrome lamps that screamed Ashley's taste. James signed for them, never mentioning the cost, never acknowledging that I was still paying the property taxes, the utilities, the upkeep. They were settling in, erasing me piece by piece, and I let them think they'd won. But inside I was sharpening something new, a plan bold and unyielding, born from the ashes of my hurt. One morning while James and Ashley were out with Emma at the park, I sat at my desk, the one Tom had built for me from reclaimed oak, its surface worn smooth by years of my hands. I pulled out the house deed from a locked drawer, my name printed in crisp black ink. Elizabeth Marie Thompson. No James, no Ashley, just me. The house was mine, paid off after years of double shifts and careful budgeting. I stared at the paper, my pulse quickening. What if I sold it? Not out of spite, though the thought of Ashley's face when she realized made my lips twitch. No, this would be about reclaiming my life, about proving I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just a guest, I was the foundation. I called my old friend Linda, a real estate agent with a no-nonsense streak and a laugh that could fill a room. We met at a diner on the edge of Savannah, the kind with sticky tables and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since dawn. Over a slice of pecan pie I laid it out. "I want to sell the house, Linda. Fast. And I don't want James or Ashley to know until it's done." My voice was steady, but my hands shook slightly as I stirred my coffee. Linda raised an eyebrow, her fork pausing mid-bite. "Elizabeth, that's your home. You sure about this?" "I mean, I get it, Ashley sounds like a piece of work, but selling, that's big." She leaned back, studying me. "What's the plan after?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Somewhere new. Somewhere mine. But I can't stay there. Not after what she said. What they did." She nodded, her eyes softening. "All right, market's hot right now. We could list it tomorrow, probably get an offer in a week. Cash buyers are sniffing around Savannah like hounds. You want discreet, I can keep it off the public listings, show it to select clients. But you gotta be ready to move quick." "I am," I said, and I meant it. The decision felt like shedding a heavy coat, one I'd been carrying too long. Linda promised to schedule an appraisal when James and Ashley were out, to keep things quiet. We finished our coffee, and I drove home, my mind buzzing with possibilities. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. That night, alone in my guest room, I opened my laptop and started searching for a new place. I didn't want another big house, nothing that needed tending like a child. I wanted simple, free, mine. A listing caught my eye. A seaside cottage in Beaufort, South Carolina, just 2 hours from Savannah. It was small, with white clapboard walls and a porch overlooking the ocean. The photos showed a cozy living room with a fireplace, a bedroom just big enough for my things, and a view that promised peace. I could almost hear the waves, feel the salt air. I called the agent and set up a viewing for the next week, my heart racing at the thought of a fresh start. But every step forward came with a pang. I thought of Emma, her chubby hands tugging at my skirt, her voice singing my name. Could I leave her behind? Could I walk away from the only family I had left? I pushed the thoughts down, focusing on the plan. Linda came through 2 days later, sneaking an appraiser in, while James and Ashley were at a playdate. The house was valued higher than I'd expected, $450,000, thanks to Savannah's booming market and the care I'd put into every inch. You could walk away with a nice chunk, Elizabeth, Linda said over the phone. Enough to start over anywhere you want. I told her to list it, but the sale moved faster than I'd dared hope, like a train picking up speed before I could second guess, jumping aboard. Linda called me on a Thursday morning, her voice crackling with excitement through the phone. Elizabeth, we've got a cash offer. Young couple from Atlanta, relocating for work. They love the house. $460,000, above asking, and they want to close in 2 weeks. My heart thudded, a mix of triumph and dread. 2 weeks, that's all I had to untangle myself from the life I'd built in Savannah, from the home that held Tom's laughter and James's childhood. But Ashley's words, "You're just a guest here," echoed in my mind, and I knew I couldn't stay. "Take it," I told Linda, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Get it done." I'd already visited the Beaufort cottage, and it was everything the listing promised. Small, weathered, but alive with the sound of waves and the scent of salt air. Standing on its porch, watching the ocean stretch endless and blue, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I put in an offer the same day, using a chunk of my savings to secure it. The sale of my Savannah house would cover the rest, and leave me with enough to live comfortably, maybe even travel a bit. For the first time in decades, I was thinking about what I wanted, not what my family needed. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Back in Savannah, I moved like a spy in my own home. James and Ashley didn't suspect a thing, too wrapped up in their routines. James job hunting, Ashley redecorating with a zeal that made my stomach churn. She'd hung new curtains in the dining room, gaudy gold things that clashed with the oak table Tom and I had picked out at a flea market. I caught her measuring the living room one afternoon, muttering about a new sectional sofa. "This place is finally coming together," she said, not noticing me in the doorway. I didn't respond, just slipped away, my resolve hardening like steel. Let her plan her dream home. She'd find out soon enough it wasn't hers to claim. I packed in secret, working late at night when the house was quiet. I sorted through decades of memories, each item a choice, keep or leave. I kept the essentials, Tom's wool sweater, still faintly scented with his aftershave, my mother's quilt, hand-stitched with her love, a box of photos, showing James as a boy, grinning gap-toothed on his bike, the rest furniture, dishes, the trinkets Ashley sneered at, I left behind. I didn't need them where I was going. My new life in Beaufort would be leaner, lighter, unburdened by the weight of a family that didn't see me. I shipped my boxes to the cottage, using a friend's address to avoid question. Every step felt like peeling away a layer of the old Elizabeth, the one who'd swallowed her hurt for the sake of peace. The day I signed the papers, I met Linda at her office downtown, away from prying eyes. The Atlanta couple's signatures were already on the contract, their deposit wired. I added my name, Elizabeth Marie Thompson, in the same careful cursive I'd used on my wedding day. "It's done," Linda said, handing me a copy. Title transfers next week. They'll give James and Ashley 30 days to vacate. I nodded, my throat tight. I'd done it. I'd sold the house that held my past, my pain, my everything, and I hadn't said a word to my son. That night, I wrote a note on a single sheet of paper. The house is sold. You have 30 days to move. Good luck. I left it on the kitchen counter, tucked under a coffee mug so it wouldn't blow away. I took one last walk through the house, my fingers brushing the banister, the door frame, the windowsill where Tom used to sit with his coffee. The oak tree outside stood silent, its moss swaying in the breeze. I didn't cry. I was done with tears. I loaded my suitcase into my car, the same old Honda I'd driven for a decade, and drove to Beaufort under a sky streaked with pink and gold. The cottage welcomed me like an old friend. I unpacked slowly, arranging my photos on the mantel, hanging my mother's quilt over the armchair. The ocean was louder here, a constant rhythm that drowned out the ache in my chest. I spent my first week settling in, exploring Beaufort's quiet streets, its charming shops and marsh-lined paths. I joined a book club at the local library, where women my age welcomed me with warm smiles and stories of their own. I started painting again, setting up an easel on the porch, capturing the ocean's shifting moods in blues and grays. It was a small life, but it was mine. Weeks passed without a word from James or Ashley. I wondered if they'd found the note yet, if they'd realized what I'd done. Did they think I'd just slipped away for a weekend, or did they know I was gone for good? Part of me wanted them to feel the shock, to understand what they'd lost. But another part, the part that still loved them, despite everything, hoped they'd be okay, especially Emma. I missed her fiercely, her sticky fingers and her giggle that could light up a room, but I couldn't go back, not after what they'd done, not after they'd made me a stranger in my own home. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sun dip below the horizon, 3 months passed in Beaufort, each day weaving me deeper into my new life. The cottage had become my sanctuary, its walls absorbing the quiet rhythm of my days, morning coffee on the porch, afternoons painting the ocean's restless waves, evenings with my book club, where laughter and stories filled the gaps left by my old life. I'd found a rhythm, a peace I hadn't known since Tom was alive, but beneath it all, a small ache lingered, for Emma's giggle, for James's boyish grin, for the family I'd thought we were. I pushed it down, focusing on the life I was building, but I couldn't help wondering, had they found my note? Did they care that I was gone? The silence from Savannah was deafening, and I told myself I preferred it that way, until the phone rang. It was a crisp October morning, the air sharp with the promise of fall. I was on the porch, sketching the marsh grasses that swayed like dancers in the breeze, when my phone buzzed against the wooden railing. James's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach twisted. I hadn't heard from him since I left. Not a call, not a text. I let it ring twice, my thumb hovering over the screen. Before I answered, "Hello," my voice was calm, but my heart wasn't. "Mom?" James's voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. "What did you do?" He sounded like he was standing in a windstorm. His words rushed and jagged. "We got an eviction notice. The new owners want us out in a week." "A week? Why didn't you tell us you sold the house?" The accusation in his tone stung, but it was the panic that caught me off guard. James, my steady boy, sounded like he was unraveling. I took a breath, staring at the ocean to ground myself. "I left a note," I said, my voice even, "on the kitchen counter. You didn't see it." "A note," he snapped, then paused, like he was replaying the past months. "We found something weeks ago, but, Mom, you can't just do this. This is our home." His words echoed Ashley's, and the irony wasn't lost on me. Our home. The same home they'd claimed while calling me a guest. Before I could respond, Ashley's voice cut in, sharp and desperate. "Elizabeth, please, you have to fix this." She must have grabbed the phone from James. "We didn't mean it, okay? I didn't mean what I said. We can't lose the house. Not now. Not with Emma. Please come back. We'll make it right." Her voice cracked, and I could hear her breathing, fast and uneven, like she was on the verge of tears. It was the first time I'd ever heard Ashley sound anything less than certain, and for a moment I felt a flicker of pity, but then I remembered her standing over me, arms crossed, declaring me a guest in my own home. The pity faded. "I'm not coming back," I said, my words slow and deliberate. "The house is sold. It's done. You wanted it to be your home, Ashley. Now you'll have to find another one." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "Good luck." I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling as I set the phone down. The ocean roared in the distance, its waves crashing harder now, mirroring the storm in my chest. I sat there for a long time, the sketch pad forgotten in my lap. Part of me wanted to call back, to ask about Emma, to make sure they had a plan. I could picture her, my granddaughter, with her messy curls and her love for stacking blocks, caught in the middle of her parents' mess. The thought of her in a cramped apartment, or worse, twisted my. But another part of me, the part that had been dismissed, disrespected, erased, stood firm. They'd made their choices. James's silence, Ashley's cruelty. They'd built this moment as much as I had. I wasn't their safety net anymore. That evening, I walked into town, needing the distraction. Beaufort was alive with its small-town charm, the streets lined with pumpkins and twinkle lights for the fall festival. I stopped at a cafe, ordered a chai latte and sat by the window, watching families pass by. A mother pushed a stroller, her toddler waving a tiny pumpkin. It reminded me of Emma, and the ache returned, sharper now. Had I gone too far? Selling the house had been my way of reclaiming my life. But had I punished Emma in the process? I sipped my latte, the warmth doing little to ease the cold knot in my stomach. When I got back to the cottage, there were 3 missed calls from James and a voicemail. I played it, bracing myself. "Mom, it's me," he said, his voice softer now, almost broken. "I'm sorry, I should have said something when Ashley, I didn't know it would come to this. We're trying to find a place, but it's hard. Emma keeps asking for you." He paused and I heard a shaky breath. "Can we talk, please?" The message ended and I stared at the phone, my resolve wavering. Emma's name was a hook, pulling at the part of me that still loved them, despite everything. I didn't call back that night. Instead I sat on the porch, wrapped in my mother's quilt, and let the ocean's rhythm steady me. I thought about the Elizabeth I'd been in Savannah, always giving, always bending, always putting my family first, and I thought about the Elizabeth I'd was becoming here, in this cottage, by the sea, painting, and laughing, and living for myself. Selling the house hadn't just been about teaching them a lesson, it had been about saving myself. But now, with Ashley's pleas and James's apology ringing in my ears, I faced a new question. Could I forgive them? Could I let them back in, without losing the strength I'd found? The ocean didn't answer, but its waves kept crashing, steady and unyielding, as if urging me to hold my ground. The voicemail from James lingered like a ghost, his words, especially Emma's name, haunting me through the night. I didn't call back right away. Instead, I let the ocean's steady rhythm and the quiet of my Beaufort cottage hold me together. I'd learned that rushing into decisions often led to regret, and I wasn't the same Elizabeth who'd once bent over backward to keep the peace. I'd sold my Savannah home, walked away from the life I'd known to reclaim my dignity. But now, with James's apology and Ashley's desperate pleas echoing in my mind, I faced a choice: hold firm in my newfound independence, or open the door just a crack, to the family I'd left behind. The answer wasn't simple, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. Days turned into weeks, and I leaned into my routine to keep the questions at bay. Mornings were for coffee on the porch, watching the sun paint the marsh gold. Afternoons I painted, my canvases filling with the ocean's moods, stormy grays one day, soft blues the next. My book club became a lifeline, the women there sharing stories of their own reinventions, divorces, career changes, moves across the country. "You're brave, Elizabeth," one of them, Clara, said over tea one evening. "Not many would have walked away like you did." Her words warmed me, but they didn't erase the ache for Emma, or the guilt that tugged when I thought of James's voice, broken and sorry. A month after the call, a letter arrived, the envelope marked with James's familiar scrawl. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd bought at a Beaufort flea market, and opened it with steady hands. No begging this time, just an update, written in his careful, slanted handwriting. They'd found a 2-bedroom apartment in Savannah, nothing fancy but close to Emma's preschool. James was working again, a steady job at an auto shop. Ashley had taken on extra shifts at the boutique. "She's sorry, Mom," he wrote. "She knows she was wrong. We both do. I should have spoken up when she said those things. I didn't realize how much we hurt you." The letter ended with a request. "Can we visit? Emma misses you. We all do." I read it twice, then set it down, my eyes drifting to the photo on my mantle. James at 6, grinning on a tire swing under the Savannah oak tree. I missed him, the boy he'd been, and even the man he was, flawed as he was. And Emma, her absence was a constant ache, like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. But Ashley, her apology, filtered through James's words, felt hollow. I remembered her standing over me, her voice cold. "You're just a guest here." Forgiveness wasn't easy, and I wasn't sure I owed it to her. I waited a week before responding, choosing my words carefully. I invited them to Beaufort, but on my terms, no surprises, no expectation. "Come for the day," I wrote. "We'll talk." I mailed the letter and tried to push it from my mind, focusing on a new painting, a stormy sea with a single lighthouse standing firm. It felt like me, weathered but unyielding. They arrived on a Saturday, the first crisp day of November. I heard their car before I saw it, the crunch of gravel pulling me to the porch. Emma burst out first, her curls bouncing as she ran to me, shouting, "Gamma!" I knelt, scooping her into my arms, her warmth melting the walls I'd built. She smelled of strawberries and shampoo, and for a moment nothing else mattered. James followed, his eyes tired but soft, like the boy I remembered. Ashley hung back, her arms crossed, her face a mix of nerves and something I couldn't read, regret, maybe, or shame. We sat in the living room.